In 2011, I worked as a first grade teacher. And one of my favorite science units to teach was a unit on ecosystems. Now listen, when you're teaching first grader science, you are either building curiosity and wonder, or you're supporting the 6-year-old belief that tomatoes grow at the grocery store. So we built terrariums. We took these big clear containers and we layered soil, moss, and tree seedlings. And then we sprayed the soil and the moss with water. And after that, we added pill bugs, millipedes, and night crawlers. And yes, I was afraid of everything we placed inside that container. But a teacher's got to do what a teacher's got to do. Then we sealed the container up, leaving tiny air holes at the top, because there was no way I could come to work one morning and be greeted by millipedes on the floor before I was greeted by my students. And speaking of students, they absolutely loved this unit. Not just because it was hands-on, but because after a few days, they could actually see the water cycle taking place. The water would rise, condensation would form, and then the water would fall back down again. And everything in that terrarium was connected to the flow of water. What I know now is that the health of every ecosystem depends on connection and flow. And so does the health of a human life. You see, I wasn't just teaching science. I was getting a glimpse of how life works for each of us, because we're all more connected than we realize. The problem was, connection wasn't really a lesson I grew up learning, because I was born in the 70s, which means I am Generation X. And if you know anything about Gen X women, you know we were raised to survive. We were the latchkey kids. We had grit. We rode our bikes and played outside until the street lights came on. And we even had this unspoken rule that said, what happens in this house stays in this house. So we became strong, self-sufficient, and silent. And culture rewarded us for it. People called us resilient. Bosses promoted us for being dependable, and churches praised us for being faithful. But underneath all of that faithfulness, a lot of us were just plain old exhausted and lonely, because survival and connection are not the same thing. And it would take me a few years to understand that, because for most of my life, I didn't live in the flow, and I definitely did not live like a river. I would say I lived more so like a dam, holding everything in, managing everything myself, being the strong one. But what often looked like strength on the outside was really just isolation and lack of trust, dressed up in a cute outfit and a smile, with a track that played in my head that said, how will people treat you when they see the real unpolished you? And then my husband's liver began to fail. And every belief I had about strength was tested, because a crisis is an excellent truth teller. It will expose every false belief you have and show you exactly what you're made of. Because when the person you love is fighting for their life, you discover very quickly that your color-coded planner and your positive attitude and ability to handle it cannot save you. But what surprised me most wasn't how scared I was. It was how uncomfortable I was receiving help. It was like my pride didn't want people carrying pieces of a burden that I was determined to carry all alone just to prove how strong I was. But every act of kindness by our community forced me to face something I didn't even realize I believed. You see, somewhere in my Gen X upbringing, I had confused independence with strength. But standing in the middle of my husband's liver transplant journey, a new rhythm of life began to emerge, and I discovered that what makes creation resilient isn't independence, it's connection. And there's no better place for us to learn about that than down by the river. Because you see, a river, it stays alive because it accepts what it needs. A river doesn't tell the rain no, and it welcomes streams and tributaries because it understands something we may have forgotten. That everything in nature that survives does so because it remains connected to something beyond itself. But we've been taught that strength means standing all alone, and so we isolate ourselves from the very people that could help us receive what we need. And when we stop receiving, something in us begins to dry up. We stop asking for help. We stop sharing our burdens, and we build walls where bridges were meant to be. And little by little, we become more isolated than strong. But living like a river requires a different kind of courage. It's the courage it takes to be seen, known, and supported in one of your most vulnerable seasons of life. And when we decide to live like a river, something remarkable happens. The people around us begin to enhance our lives in ways we never could on our own. And eventually, we realize that what we've received was never meant to end with us, because rivers don't keep their waters, they pass it on. And so the encouragement we receive becomes the encouragement we give. And the support we receive becomes the support we offer. And the grace we receive becomes the grace we extend. See, that's the thing about rivers. They create life everywhere they go by staying connected to what sustains them. Because true strength isn't measured by how much you can carry on your own. It's measured by your willingness to remain connected when your life circumstances tempts you to withdraw. The art of living like a river really is quite simple. It's choosing connection over isolation. It's receiving what you need without guilt. And then once you receive, it's you allowing that to flow through you to someone else in their time of need. So if there's one thing I hope you remember when you leave here today is this: we were never created to live like a dam, cut off from community, holding everything in just to prove how strong we are. Because life flourishes where there is connection and flow. And whether it's a terrarium or a river or a human life, the ones who thrive are the ones who remain connected. So from this day forward, may we all choose to live like a river.